Have you ever wondered what triggers a financial crisis in a nation? Today, we unravel the story of Greece. A story that began with Greece's entry into the Eurozone in the year 2001. The Eurozone, a monetary union of 19 of the 27 European Union countries which have adopted the euro as their currency. For Greece, becoming part of this union signified economic stability and a promising future. The nation was thriving, the economy was growing, and everything seemed to be going in the right direction. But beneath the surface, the seeds of a crisis were being sown. Greece's public debt was burgeoning, growing like a snowball rolling down a hill. And yet this was not immediately apparent. Through creative financial mechanisms, Greece was able to hide the true extent of its public debt. It was like a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode. Then came the global financial crisis of 2008. It was a catalyst that accelerated Greece's descent into financial turmoil. With economies around the world reeling from the effects of the crisis, Greece's hidden debt became too big to conceal. The ticking time bomb was about to explode. The Greek economy, once a beacon of hope and growth, was now on the brink of disaster. The nation's hidden debt had come to light, revealing a financial health that was far from stable. It was a shocking revelation, one that sent tremors through the global financial community. The stage was set for a crisis that was not just about numbers and economics, but about people and their lives. A crisis that was not confined to the borders of Greece, but one that would impact the entire European Union. As the truth about Greece's financial health began to surface, it set the stage for a crisis that would shake not just Greece, but the entire European Union. Tune in to the next scene as we delve into the domino effect of this unraveling crisis. The financial crisis in Greece didn't just stop at its borders, it sent shockwaves across the globe. Just as a single domino can trigger a cascade, the economic fallout in Greece set off a chain reaction that reverberated far beyond its shores. Greece's economy contracted dramatically, shrinking by a quarter in just 5 years. The unemployment rate skyrocketed, reaching a peak of 27%. Young people were hit especially hard, with more than half of them unable to find work. Pensions were slashed, public services were cut, and discontent grew among the Greek people as austerity measures bit deep. But the crisis didn't stop at Greece's shores. It rippled out, impacting other nations within the European Union. Spain, Italy, and Portugal in particular felt the tremors. These countries, often bundled together with Greece under the unfortunate acronym PIGS, were suffering from similar economic weaknesses. Their economies were fragile, their public debts were high, and they too were vulnerable to the domino effect triggered by the Greek crisis. In Spain, the unemployment rate climbed to a staggering 26%. In Italy, public debt soared to over 130% of GDP. In Portugal, the economy contracted by 4% in 1 year alone. The Greek crisis had become a European crisis. The European Union found itself in a precarious position. On one hand, it needed to prevent the Greek crisis from spreading further and destabilizing the Eurozone. On the other hand, it needed to ensure that its response didn't sow the seeds of future crises. As the dominoes continued to fall, it became clear that the Greek crisis was not just a national problem, it was a European dilemma. It was a stark reminder that in an interconnected world, a crisis in one country can quickly become a crisis in many. The Greek crisis wasn't just a national problem, it had become a European dilemma. The dominoes had started to fall, and the challenge was to stop them before they brought down the entire structure. Behind the numbers and economic jargon, there were real people whose lives were drastically upended. When Greece's economy crumbled, it wasn't just figures on a balance sheet that were affected. The societal consequences were all too palpable. One of the most striking impacts was on healthcare. As part of austerity measures, the Greek government had to make drastic cuts to public spending. Hospitals, clinics, and other healthcare facilities were not spared. This led to shortages of essential medical supplies and professionals, leaving many people without access to vital health services. Imagine being in need of life-saving treatment, but the resources simply aren't there. Education also took a significant hit. Schools found themselves unable to afford basic supplies, let alone maintain quality education standards. Teachers, underpaid and overstretched, struggled to provide the nurturing environment that children need to thrive. Public services, the backbone of any functioning society, were also affected, with funding slashed. Services such as transportation, sanitation, and public safety suffered. Roads became less safe, trash collection became sporadic, and public spaces fell into disrepair. The very fabric of society seemed to be fraying at the edges. Perhaps the most heartbreaking was the surge in poverty rates. Unemployment skyrocketed, wages plummeted, and many people found themselves unable to afford even the basic necessities. The streets of Athens, once bustling and vibrant, became home to an increasing number of homeless individuals. Families who were once middle class were now struggling to put food on the table. And then there was the psychological impact, the stress of financial insecurity, the fear of an uncertain future, the despair of watching one's country crumble. It all took a toll on the mental health of the Greek population. Depression rates rose, as did suicide rates, painting a bleak picture of a society in distress. The Greek crisis wasn't just an economic catastrophe, it was a human tragedy. It served as a stark reminder that behind every economic decision, behind every austerity measure, there are real people whose lives can be irreversibly altered. In the face of such a crisis, how does a nation pick itself up? The answer lies in the hard-fought journey of Greece. The Greek financial crisis was a daunting challenge. It required a combination of international aid, drastic austerity measures, and a willingness to endure economic and political upheaval. Greece's first lifeline came from the European Union and the International Monetary Fund. They provided bailout packages amounting to hundreds of billions of euros. But these weren't gifts, they were loans with stringent conditions attached. Greece had to drastically cut its spending, which led to an era of austerity. Public services were slashed, pensions were cut, and taxes were raised. This was a bitter pill to swallow, but it was deemed necessary to stabilize the economy and ensure Greece's continued place in the Eurozone. The austerity measures had a profound impact on Greek society. Unemployment soared, living standards fell, and the country experienced political upheaval. The traditional parties that had dominated Greek politics were swept aside, replaced by new forces promising to challenge the status quo. But despite the hardship, Greece began to see signs of recovery. The economy started to grow again, albeit slowly. Unemployment began to fall. The country even returned to the international bond market, a signal that international investors were regaining confidence in Greece's economic prospects. However, the cost of this recovery was high. The Greek people bore the brunt of the hardship. The economic reforms led to a significant decrease in living standards, and the political turmoil resulted in a feeling of uncertainty and instability. The country's debt remained high, and the economic growth was not robust enough to significantly reduce unemployment or poverty. Yet Greece's story is not just one of economic hardship and political upheaval. It's a story of resilience, of a nation refusing to be defeated by adversity. It's a story of a people who, despite the odds, are determined to rebuild their country and their lives. Greece's journey out of the crisis was neither quick nor easy, but it was a testament to resilience in the face of adversity. In every crisis, there are lessons to be learned. What can we take away from the Greek financial crisis? As we journey back through the tumultuous events of the past, we see that the Greek financial crisis was a stark wake-up call, not just for Greece, but for the whole of Europe and indeed the world. It underscored the importance of fiscal responsibility, transparency, and the immense value of solidarity within the European Union. The crisis unfolded in a way that revealed the vulnerabilities in the Greek economy and the European Union's financial structure. It became abundantly clear that unsustainable levels of debt, coupled with a lack of transparency and accountability, can have catastrophic consequences. This was a hard lesson, but one that needed to be learned. It's also essential to remember that the crisis was not just an economic event, it was a human tragedy that affected countless lives. The pain and hardship endured by the Greek people were real and profound. The ripple effects of the crisis were felt across the continent, affecting other economies and highlighting the interconnected nature of our global financial system. In the aftermath of the crisis, Greece has taken significant steps to rebuild its economy. Austerity measures were tough but necessary to restore fiscal stability. The country has adopted new economic policies, focusing on improving fiscal discipline, enhancing transparency, and promoting sustainable growth. The crisis also reshaped the wider European economic landscape. It sparked a renewed commitment to fiscal responsibility and solidarity within the European Union. The EU has since implemented stricter financial regulations and increased economic cooperation among member states to prevent a similar crisis from happening in the future. As we reflect on these events, we see that the Greek financial crisis was a harsh teacher, but from these tough lessons, Greece and the European Union have emerged stronger and more resilient. The crisis has become a pivotal chapter in the history of global economics, a chapter that continues to shape policy-making and economic thinking today. The Greek financial crisis serves as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of our global economy and the human cost of financial mismanagement.